The film begins with a boy named Soichiro Takakura. At that time, he became an orphan because his mom died when he was born, and when he was 17, he lost his dad too. But he didn't feel lonely because he made a new friend, a cute cat named Pete, on the day his dad passed away. After his dad's death, he was adopted by his dad's family, and his new family included his uncle Koichi and Koichi's daughter, Riko Matsushita. Turns out, Soichiro began learning a lot about robotic engineering from Koichi. Unfortunately, a few years later, Koichi and his wife died in a plane crash. After losing both her parents, Riko, who was still in junior high school, had to go live with her uncle Kazutao. The story then jumps to March 1, 1995, where there's exciting news about Soichiro. He managed to create a robot called Robot A1, which has the ability to learn and become smarter based on what its owner teaches it. This robot became really popular and got the attention of TV shows. It was developed by a company owned by Kazutao. At the same time, snow started falling. Riko, who often helped Soichiro with his homework, came to visit him. She shared the news that she would be moving to a high school dormitory next week, which meant she couldn't visit Soichiro's house as often. Soichiro comforted Riko, assuring her that they could still hang out during school holidays. Meanwhile, Soichiro was busy working on a new project, which was creating a special plasma battery that doesn't need recharging. This battery would allow robots to stay active without stopping. The project was originally started by Koichi, who had passed away, and now Soichiro was determined to make Koichi's dream a reality. Around the same time, Soichiro's girlfriend, Shiraisi Rin, arrived with some documents for him to sign. She also worked as Kazutao's assistant. Riko, who was still there, seemed uncomfortable with Shiraishi's presence and chose to leave. The documents Shiraishi brought included transferring ownership of some shares in Soichiro's company, FOE, to her. This meant that Shiraishi, who had previously been an accounting secretary, would now have a more important role in the company. However, it was Soichiro's own decision to transfer the shares to Shiraishi. He believed in her abilities and thought she could handle important responsibilities in the future. After signing the documents, Shiraishi gave Soichiro a kiss. A week later, Soichiro went to the FOE office and was surprised to find Kazutao planning an unexpected meeting with the company's shareholders. Kazutao had a plan to release their A1 robot early and sell the patent rights to another company called Manix Enterprises. He wanted to do this to get more money and beat their competitors, aiming to dominate the global market. Soichiro didn't agree with this plan. He thought it was too rushed. He believed they needed to create at least one more robot model before putting it on the market. This difference of opinion led to Shiraishi suggesting they vote on the proposal. But to Soichiro's shock, Shiraishi, who was now the third shareholder, supported Kazutao's plan. This decision meant Soichiro was no longer a part of the company. He couldn't use the company's facilities or equipment anymore, and he realized he had been deceived. Shortly after this, Soichiro returned home, feeling angry. Sadly, he found out that all of his robot stuff and furniture had been taken by the company. Meanwhile, Riko, who was about to move to the dormitory, decided to visit Soichiro's house to say goodbye. However, she was really surprised when she saw how messy Soichiro's house was. She also noticed that Soichiro seemed really sad and was drinking alcohol. Riko realized that Kazutao was the one who made him like that, so she changed her mind and decided not to go to the dormitory. Instead, she wanted to live with Soichiro to support him. Sadly, Soichiro, feeling desperate, turned down Riko's offer. He believed that Riko wouldn't be able to help and would only be a burden to him. Hearing that, Riko was disappointed by his decision, and in the end, she left his house. At the same time, Soichiro came across a pamphlet from a company called Credius. Turns out, they do something unusual. They put people into a deep sleep and wake them up 5 to 30 years later. Before going into this deep sleep, Soichiro asked a lawyer to transfer his shares in FOE to Riko, and she would get them when he turned 20. But before he could join this program, he needed to pass a health check. Unfortunately, when Soichiro went to the doctor for the checkup, they found a lot of alcohol in his body, and they could tell he was feeling very down. So the doctor couldn't approve Soichiro for the program and told him to come back when he was sober and feeling better to reconsider this frozen sleep idea. Meanwhile, Riko, who had gone to Kazutao's house, overheard a conversation between Kazutao and Shiraishi. They were planning to finish the plasma battery design with the help of other engineers. She also learned that the company's truck, which was supposed to pick up equipment from Soichiro's house, had mysteriously disappeared. Worried about Soichiro, Riko tried to contact him but couldn't reach him, so she hurried back to his house. Kazutao, who felt suspicious about Riko's actions, quickly checked the last call on the phone and saw that Riko had tried to contact Soichiro. He rushed after Riko to find out what was going on. Meanwhile, Soichiro went to Kazutao's house to have a direct conversation with Shiraishi. Soichiro asked for all the research equipment to be returned and threatened to expose the bad things Kazutao and Shiraishi had done, which would harm the company's reputation. Upon hearing this, Shiraishi, feeling threatened, injected Soichiro with an anesthetic, making him lose consciousness. Then she opened Soichiro's bag and got a shock when Pete the cat jumped at her. This made Shiraishi angry, and she started chasing Pete. Right at that moment, a glass window broke, as if someone had shattered it on purpose. At the same time, Pete and Soichiro's car, driven by someone else, disappeared. At that time, Shiraishi thought that Soichiro had come with someone else, but Soichiro was already unconscious, so she couldn't question him. Then, Shiraishi found a brochure about frozen sleep in Soichiro's bag and got an idea. She decided to put Soichiro in a frozen sleeping tube managed by the company Mannix Enterprises. Also mentioned that she had worked for Mannix Enterprises to help them avoid taxes. Afterward, she pressed a button, activating the frozen sleep tube, where Soichiro would sleep for the next 30 years. In the meantime, Riko had a surprise meeting with the person who had previously taken Soichiro's car from Kazutao's house. She was quite startled when she saw this person. Skipping ahead 30 years, Soichiro woke up in a hospital room, and there was a doctor with him, the same doctor he had met 30 years ago at Cretius. However, the doctor revealed that the person Soichiro had met back then was not himself but his father. Soichiro then asked about his cat, but instead of the cat, he was greeted by a humanoid robot named Pete 13. It turned out that this robot would assist Soichiro during his recovery over the next 5 days. When Soichiro fully woke up, he learned that he had lost all his assets because both FOE and Mannix Enterprises had gone bankrupt in the last 30 years. However, he would still receive financial help as compensation for his frozen sleep. He was also given an address by someone named Riko, who had apparently been asking about when Soichiro would wake up. The next day, Soichiro planned to escape from the hospital with just his cassette player and wallet. On the way, he tried to hail a taxi, but none appeared. Suddenly, Pete 13 showed up and told Soichiro to use a phone app to call a taxi, which arrived quickly. Soichiro was amazed when he got into the taxi and realized there was no driver cause. Turns out it could drive itself. Soichiro, feeling more confused, tried to order Pete 13 out of the taxi, but Pete 13 refused. He explained that there was a program error that made him look like a human, and he followed Soichiro because he knew Soichiro was a robot designer and could fix him if needed. Soon after, Pete 13 took Soichiro's wallet and tossed it away, saying that all transactions were done with mobile devices now. They eventually arrived at what was supposed to be Riko's house, but it was a mess and belonged to Shiraishi, who looked quite different and claimed to be Riko. She explained that a year after Soichiro was frozen, Kazutao passed away from complications related to diabetes, and another company took over FWE shares. Not long after that, a mysterious man suddenly appeared and spilled the beans about how Shiraishi had helped Mannix Enterprises avoid paying taxes. As a result, Shiraishi ended up in prison, and Mannix Enterprises slowly went out of business. Shiraishi also mentioned that Riko had supposedly died in a fire at Soichiro's house on the night when Soichiro was drugged. Although they never found Riko's body, Kazutao claimed to have seen the fire clearly. These words deeply hurt Soichiro, and decided to visit Riko's grave. After Riko and her cat left, Soichiro felt determined to uncover the identity of the mysterious man mentioned by Shiraishi and to find out the cause of Riko's death. With Pete 13's assistance, they went to the library to search for information on the internet. There they discovered that the FOE company had been taken over by another company called Guardian Manufacturing. Suddenly, at the same time, Pete 13 was ready to go into sleep mode. This was necessary for robots to perform self-repairs. Hearing this, Soichiro took the opportunity to ask Pete 13 to show him his energy source. When Pete 13 revealed his energy source, Soichiro was astonished to find out that Pete 13 used a plasma battery, a long-lasting energy source that Soichiro had been developing 30 years ago. Shortly after, Pete 13 explained that he was made by the Aladdin Industry Company, which is now the leader in the global robot market. So they decided to visit the Guardian manufacturing office first and meet the CEO. When they got to the company, the receptionist robot initially didn't welcome Soichiro. However, when he introduced himself as Soichiro Takakura, the designer of animal robots, they let him meet the CEO, Tsuboi Gota. Gota seemed really happy to meet Soichiro, which left Soichiro feeling confused. His confusion grew when Gota mentioned that it was thanks to Soichiro creating the plasma battery and giving exclusive rights to Aladdin Industry. He also showed a book that Soichiro had signed as a child and recalled the moment when Soichiro signed it. Back then, Soichiro had visited his family's restaurant with Toa Junosuke. Soon after that, Mr. Toa got arrested by the police for using university funds for his time machine research. Although Soichiro couldn't remember many details, he began to think that someone might have used his name to perfect his plasma battery intentionally. Afterward, Soichiro discovered data from the Guardian company that showed he had transferred his shares to someone named Sato Taro. Sato Taro was not only one of the founders of Aladdin Industry, but also a patent attorney chosen by Soichiro himself. This revelation led to the realization that Soichiro had designed the first version of Pete's robot, which Rico later improved into the second version and so on. With this information, Soichiro began to piece things together. Soichiro and Pete 13 then visited Mr. Toei's laboratory, where Mr. Toei seemed very happy to see him. There the mystery was finally unveiled, and it turned out that Soichiro was the mastermind behind it all. There, Soichiro had asked Mr. Toei to perfect his time machine in a previous time loop, using the plasma battery he had designed. Once Mr. Toei had completed his research, he asked Soichiro to travel back 30 years in time. As a token of gratitude for Mr. Toei's past support, Soichiro received some gold from him. While Soichiro was preparing to use the time machine and bidding farewell, Pete 13 unexpectedly jumped into Soichiro's body, transporting him back in time by 30 years. When they arrived in the past, they meet a man named Sato Taro, who then took them to his house. After Soichiro woke up, Sato Taro explained everything, including the fact that they had come from the future and what Soichiro needed to do in the present. Sato Taro had even sold all the gold Soichiro had brought from the future and made preparations for Soichiro's plan. Back then, it was February 28, 1995, just a day before they were going to reveal the A1 robot on TV. Realizing this, Soichiro got to work right away, trying to perfect the blueprint for the plasma battery in just 1 week. The next day, Soichiro went to Tsuboi's restaurant to meet Mr. Toei and gave him all the money from selling the gold. Mr. Toei initially refused and couldn't believe that Soichiro had come from the future thanks to his time machine invention. But when they saw the TV news reporting Soichiro as the inventor of the A1 robot, Mr. Toei believed it and accepted the money. Soon after, the restaurant owner's son recognized Soichiro, who was starting to get famous in the media. Suddenly, a young boy asked for an autograph on his book, and it turned out that the boy was Gota. In the evening, Soichiro continued his plans with Sato Taro. There, Sato Taro asked why Soichiro changed the name of the robot from A1 to Pete 1. Soichiro explained that he got inspired by the name of his pet cat Pete, which is how the name for Pete's robot came about and eventually evolved into Pete 13. Now, Pete 13 is a robot that helps Soichiro in the present. In their conversation, Soichiro asked Sato Taro for help in exposing the crimes committed by Shirashi, who had assisted Mannix Enterprises in avoiding taxes. In return, if successful, Sato Taro would receive all the shares he owned in the FWE company. With this, he could finally start his own company, which he decided to call Aladdin Industry. Then, Soichiro asked Sato Taro to take care of Rico. Hearing that, Sato Taro and his wife gladly accepted this request, as they had always wanted to have a child in their lives. The next day was the day when Shiraishi and Kazu Tao would betray Soichiro. Meanwhile, Pete 13 hurried away because he was the one who had stopped the truck carrying Soichiro's research equipment in the past. With Pete 13's help, they'd managed to halt the thief's truck, which was said to have disappeared without a trace. On the other hand, Soichiro had completed his plasma battery design and went to Kazu Tao's house. There he saw Shiraishi attempting to inject him with an anesthetic. However, he saved Pete and left using a parked car. After that, Soichiro went back to his house and found Rico there. At the same time, Pete 13 arrived with a truck carrying research equipment. This connects with the earlier scene where Rico was surprised to see Soichiro there. However, she still didn't know that Soichiro was from the future. Shortly after, Soichiro intentionally crashed the car into the house and started a fire. This fire was meant to make Kazutao believe that Riko had died in it, as her body was never found. Soichiro then bid farewell to Riko to return to the future. The following day, Soichiro and Pete went to Cretias. They were about to begin a 30-year frozen sleep program. From that point on, Riko became more active in her studies, aspiring to be like Soichiro. It turns out that Riko succeeded in developing the next generation of Soichiro's Pete robot, which she named Pete 2 and another one. After 10 years, Riko decided to join the frozen sleep program and aimed to wake up 20 years later. After 30 years had gone by, Soichiro woke up from his frozen sleep and reunited with Pete's robot and his cherished cat Pete. There, he also met Riko, who had just awakened from the same frozen sleep. The film ends. The moral lesson from this film is if you're planning to fake your own death, maybe don't use your cat as a witness, cause they're notoriously bad at keeping secrets.